Welcome to Money Talks. This is Dave Workman. This podcast is brought to you by Workman Associates. Visit www.workmanassociates.com for information about the investment services, insurance, and financial planning we offer. Today we have a very special guest as we celebrate Independence Day in July, and his name is Dale Calloway, who I have some questions about what it means to be a serviceman, as well as his participation at Grissom with the American Huey 369 organization. Dale, welcome. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
My first question would be to tell me just a little bit about your background and also your service experience.
Okay. Again, my name's Dale Calloway, and I live at Royal Center with my lovely wife, Joyce, and we'll be married 50 years next month.
Well, congratulations. That's quite an accomplishment right there. That's awesome.
I say that because when we got married and got home from our honeymoon, my draft notice laid on the table.
Oh, so that's what we're talking about, 69?
Yes.
69. Okay, so Vietnam was going full bore in 69.
Yes, it was probably right after the 68 Tet, and then 69 was still pretty active.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So what branch of the service were you in, and what did you do in the service?
Well, I didn't let them draft me. I went ahead and enlisted, and like a lot of military guys, you get cross-trained in a lot of occupational skills, and my main one was being a tank mechanic.
A tank mechanic? So were you in the Army?
Yes.
Okay, so you were in the Army, tank mechanic. Gotcha.
And
Where did you train at? Where was your base of training?
Basic, it was at Fort Knox, and then I went to Fort Leonard Wood for truck school and back to Fort Knox for tank school.
Sure.
And then the armor school picked me up as one of their mechanics, and I got put in an armored cav unit. And they had 45 tanks, and they done live fire training. And that went on all day long, all week long. They would take about 10 to 12 tanks out to the firing range, line them up side by side, and they just fired them all day long.
And so was that at Fort Knox?
Yes.
I think they have the George Patton Tank Museum at Fort Knox, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they do.
That and a few bar of gold.
Yes.
Now, did you stay at Fort Knox for your 4 years of service, or what happened then?
Well, I was with the cav unit about 6 months, and then I got orders for Vietnam.
Mm-hmm.
And I went over, and it was the first of 71.
Mm-hmm.
And I was put in a unit that had no tanks, the military way, but I fell back on my other skills, and I pulled a lot of guard duty, which a lot of guys did, and then I run a 5-ton wrecker some of the time, moving equipment in vehicles, and then I've done a lot of paperwork. We're talking military, a lot of paperwork for things, and so I spent almost a full year there, and then when I come back to the States, I come back to my same unit I was in before I went over.
Okay.
So I spent about 15 months with this armored cav unit.
Where were you at in Vietnam?
I spent about the first 6 months at Calloway, and then I moved down to Benoit. So Calloway was used by the Japanese during World War II as their prisoner of war camp.
I see.
So when the United States come in for Vietnam, they kind of used that same facility.
I see. And so you came back after about a year of being overseas, and then you came back to the U.S. And so now what are we talking, 72?
Yes.
72. And what happened then?
Well, I finished up my time with the armored cav unit, and then I worked some factory jobs, and then I started working on the school buses for Pioneer School Corporation.
I see. So you put the military training to use, actually.
Yes.
Well, that's outstanding. You know, we wanted to do something with the servicemen, and oftentimes you see kind of the glamour and the glory of World War II, not so much Korea, and certainly not Vietnam. And so we know that freedom isn't free, and every person that served over in Vietnam, had just as much valor as anybody that served in Germany or Japan. So we thank you for your service. But, you have, I don't want to call it a hobby, I might even call it a passion. And it's with the Huey 369 organization, which I think is going to have something at Grissom and has had some things at Grissom. And maybe you can tell some folks about it.
Okay, this organization started out with John Walker and his wife Kay and John's brother Alan, and they found on the computer a Huey in Maine that was setting out, hadn't been flown, needed a lot of work to ever put it back to flight, and they brought that back just as a display and started hauling it different places, and it sparked interest. And the next thing you know, there were people donating time and money to see that fly again.
Is that right? Now, what year are we talking about?
Oh, I think that's about 15 years ago.
Okay.
And this helicopter served in Vietnam. So it come back to the States a lot of times for reconditioning, and it never just got shipped back.
I see. Now, I know my son and I, John, took a trip on a helicopter, and they actually said it was the helicopter that was in what would have been the movie We Were Soldiers, and that it was involved in a fight and then dropping off. And so I thought that was interesting. So they get this helicopter and they refurbish it, and then people are starting to get involved in that. So where do we go from there?
Well, then it wasn't long before they got a second helicopter, and it was 803. And now they have a third one that is 049 that served in Vietnam as well. They do events at different locations all across the United States. And the primary goal is to honor all veterans of all eras and no matter what branch of service they served in. The second thing is to educate the public on the importance of what the Huey done and how it served in Vietnam. And last but not the very least at all is to help veterans heal. And at every event, no matter how big or how small, there's healing going on. Because when the Vietnam veterans come back, they weren't welcomed at all.
That's right.
And a lot of them would not even talk about it for fear of ridicule by those around them. And so we've got guys that come into us now after 45, 50 years, depending on when they served. And there's a lot of camaraderie between the veterans, and a lot of healing goes on, and they say, well, I finally feel like I'm home.
That's one of probably the biggest reason I wanted to have you in here, Dale, because when we went out there, they talked about, first of all, guys and to some extent some gals were really transported everywhere by the Huey.
Yes.
And the sounds permeated the countryside, and how it's been cathartic for men and women to take that first flight, which I just think is one of the neatest things, because you're right. I mean, I was of age when Vietnam was going on and became of age for service right after Vietnam. In our town, Kewanee, Illinois, we had, which is about as big as a Logan, we lost like 8 or 9 guys, which is a lot of guys for that small a town. But nobody was really welcome back, So I think this is a great way. And so tell me, how can people support this organization if they'd be so inclined?
They can go on our website, and
I've got it right here. That is, that's an email. I don't know if I do it. Oh, I'm sorry, I do have the website. American Huey, and Huey is HUEY 369.com. American Huey 369.com is your website.
One thing I want to bring to your attention, that if you were wounded and put on a Huey and it had a combat medic on board, your survival rate is 98%.
Wow.
Now, during World War
Wow.
II, if you were wounded and they got you back, your survival rate was 40%.
Wow, that's amazing. That's an amazing, I've never ever heard that statistic. So that just shows how important the bird was.
Yes,
So, is this in conjunction with the museum that's going to be out on 31 across from Grissom?
that's the one that we're wanting to build to house these, to continue the legacy and to educate people on just what the Huey done. And we would like all of our veterans and patriots especially to help us in this endeavor to get the funds to get that museum built.
So, is there going to be a rally? Isn't there something that they come in for a weekend, the Hueys out at Grissom?
One of the things that happens is they call the gathering, and that's goes for about 3 days.
Okay.
And a lot of people, again, come from all over. And one of the unique things right now is we've got pilots coming in that flew the actual helicopters we have. And when they start to speak, you want to step up a little closer and not miss anything they got to tell you about themselves or the bird that they flew on.
So, do you know when that gathering will be this year? I didn't ask you that before, but knowing Dale, he came prepared.
Give me just a second.
That's
the
okay.
gathering is August 10th and 11th.
August 10th and 11th.
Yes.
And I can tell folks that I've been there a couple of times, and it is well worth it. And it's at Grissom. It's not the museum. It's at Grissom proper.
Yes.
And folks, it is well worth it. I have never been in a helicopter before, and they strapped us in there, John and I, and you don't have any doors on the side of those things. And unlike a plane, I mean, you go straight up and you are off. It's great because you do see these service people in there, and that's why we're doing this, folks. We're trying to promote it. We all know and need to be reminded a couple things. One, that freedom isn't free. And, right now we're at war. People don't realize it, but we've got young men and women in harm's way, and we need to honor those that have served before and pray for and honor those that are serving right now. And so Dale has been very passionate about this. In fact, he's got a book in a magazine he's dropped off before, and we've talked about it. And if some of you have ever visited our website, you've seen him in uniform. And so I could think of no better man to come in here and kind of talk a little bit about it and promote it. Is there any other points of discussion about either your service or the American 369 organization you'd like to mention, Dale, before we check out of here?
Well, we'll be at the Logansport Airport on the 28th of September.
28th of September,
Yes.
okay.
Rain date's the next day.
Okay, that's very good.
And-
And I know at Grissom they're having like an air show as well. And so there's a number of great things that people can do to show a little bit of their patriotism and support of these men and women that were in harm's way and protected our freedom. So I tell you what, Dale, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. I learned a couple of things. I love the statistic about the medic and the Huey, which is just an amazing statistic. But I hope all of you can get out there and support this wonderful organization. And this is Dave Workman with our very special guest this month, Dale Calloway, who has proudly served his country in representing the American 369 Huey organization. This podcast has been brought to you by Workman Associates. Visit www.workmanassociates.com for information about the investment services, insurance, and financial planning we offer.